And welcome back to Over Underrated. This is part 2 of our jazz fusion episode with comedian writer Matthew Crosby, and we're discussing the underrated pick Steely Dan, chosen by Matthew. Listeners to his Radio X show with Ed Gamble may be aware that he does get mocked for this choice. We thought, let's reach out and see if he can have an opportunity to change some people's minds. Let's get back to the episode. Enjoy.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad.
Right, welcome back to part 2 of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs, and we're moving on from Socks and Cocks to something same but different. Maybe
Cocks and Rolex.
A bit more.
They have socks and cocks, but they also have another outfit on top.
Yeah. Or a sports jacket or something thrown over the top.
So, Matthew, who is your underrated pick today?
Well, I mean, I think compared to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they're underrated, but they're still a pretty big band. It's the band Steely Dan, who are still an ongoing proposition, but they were originally two guys, basically. If you think of Steely Dan, you think of two guys. You think of Walter Becker, who was the bassist, later guitarist, and sort of multi-instrumentalist and songwriter, and Donald Fagen, who is the kind of organ and vocalist, and that's the band. That's the Steely Dan band. Really, there've been many other musicians that have and big musicians as well. Michael McDonald was a member as a backing vocalist for a while, but that was if you think of them, that's who they are. And of course, Walter Becker sadly died a few years ago, just before I got to see them live for the first time, which was obviously more of a tragedy for his family and the people who knew him directly, but pretty bad day for me.
Pretty
so, and I was coming back from a wedding when I found out, very hungover, coming back from a wedding, and I was going to see. We had the tickets to see them at Blues Fest at the O2. Again, another one of those things where you're like, "What's your favourite blues band?" Steely Dan. But yeah, it's a Blues Fest. It was them and the Doobie Brothers playing together, so a pretty big kind of yacht rock pairing there. And a comedian, Lloyd Langford, who I was going with, messaged me to say, I wonder if the gig's still happening. And I'd been at a wedding, I hadn't seen anything, and then I was like, why wouldn't it be? And it's like, oh, have you not heard? And I started crying, and I just like it was more because of being hungover, because I'm not I'm not the sort of person who's like cries over the death of strangers, but it was like, oh no, this band that I've liked for years and years, who didn't play the UK very often, were coming back. I mean, actually, I later found out he was so ill that he hadn't really played with them for a good year or so before those shows happened and before he passed away tragically. But yeah, they started in the 1970s, or they formed, they sort of paired together at Bard University in the 60s. They tried to become songwriters. People didn't really want to buy their songs. They started recording and performing their songs, and they're known as they're like a musos band. So if you're really into music, so if you're into the sort of the technicality of music, then they're your band, because that's what they're into. I'm not really into that side of things. I just like good songs, and I think they write really, really good songs. Quite interesting, quite weird, quite complex songs, but ultimately singable, hummable pop songs, in the same way that I guess the Red Hot Chili Peppers do. But are just a bit different. I don't imagine there's a tremendous amount of Venn diagram crossover if you were to take the audiences of the people who last saw Red Hot Chili Peppers and the people who last saw Steely Dan. Who knows? I might be completely wrong. So I've picked a handful of songs of theirs that I think, if I'd known you didn't know them at all, I probably would have picked my selection slightly, because I don't think this is necessarily a primer to the band, but this is an indication of what I like about them.
Well, I didn't know them at all, but maybe Fran.
I knew
Did you?
Reading in the Years and Dirty Work, maybe from being on film soundtracks.
Yeah,
or something. There's songs in the background a lot.
They've got some sort of quite big hits that you might recognise. Reading in the Years being and Do It Again as well.
Peg.
Jack. Oh yeah, Peg is because of course that was
De La Soul.
sampled by De La Soul. Yeah. I know I love you better. So there's a bunch of things that a bunch of songs that would be fairly recognisable to someone who was a music fan like yourself, but I haven't necessarily picked those songs.
Fran, what did you think of them?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that the band Deacon Blue got their name from a song.
That's right, yeah.
I knew they were a duo. I went up to IMDb, and IMDb describes them as an actor-composer for Rest in Peace, Almost Famous and Zodiac.
Why would you try IMDb as the first place to find out about bands?
I wanted to know what films I heard.
Oh, I see, right.
But I didn't realise that he was an actor, so that's interesting.
Steely Dan is an actor, yeah. There is no. They're also named after a steam-powered dildo from a William S. Burroughs book. So that's who Steely Dan was.
Did not know.
And when they first started playing pre Steely Dan, but Becker and Fagan's first band, the drummer was Chevy Chase.
I didn't know that.
So
wow.
he was a university buddy of theirs and played drums for them. But they're a duo in that they're the two key members, but they've always surrounded themselves with the best musicians, and they stopped performing, I think, in 1974 live because they could never replicate. They were obsessed with precision, obsessed with musical precision. They could never replicate what they had on the album in a live arena. So they basically they were constantly hiring and firing and getting in new people, but it was always the two of them writing all the songs and. Yeah, and I absolutely love them, and they are a bit of I think it's an interesting thing. They're seen as a little bit of a sort of jokey band. They're a bit sort of uncool, although they're now moving into an area where they are regarded as quite a cool band. I know my friend Lou Hayter, who I went to, I know her from years. I went to primary school with her, but she's a musician. She was in the Young Pony Club, yeah, and she recently released a version of Time Out of Mind, and she's obsessed with, she's a musician and a DJ, and she's obsessed with Steely Dan, and I think there are people kind of my age who are getting into them. We would, my parents didn't have their records. I found them kind of independently from reading an article about them once in a music magazine that described them as the REM of their day. I was obsessed with REM. I love REM. And I started listening to them. I was like, this sounds nothing like REM. But I guess they were like a kind of a cool band that intellectually thinky people might listen to. They present themselves as sort of slightly smug intellectual guy. Like lyrically, they're very arch, very sardonic, very ironic. And they are... Yeah, Donald Fagen is, and has always been, but increasing now, is like an old curmudgeon who hates everything, thinks this is a garbage generation, and hates the world. But I think he's one of the best songwriters that has ever lived, as is Walter Becker.
It was really interesting to read about their recording process and their precision. I'm fascinated by, as someone who's very much not a perfectionist, I find it interesting to read about bands where it's and then we had to do 50 takes because, it was a little bit off, but I cannot imagine what it would have been like to record with them. It must have been a pain in the ass. But yeah, I think if you'd have asked me before this, right, if you guess who Steely Dan is, I would have guessed some kind of late 80s, early 90s Americana grunge band or something like Dinosaur Jr. So I had no idea what to expect.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from.
What did you think?
Well, what did I think? Well, let's just say that Rolling Stone called them the perfect
hang on a sec. Hold tight. Anybody, if you ask someone, what do you think? And they go, well, I'll tell you what someone else thought.
What do I think? I don't
like
know.
Them. You don't like them.
Is the short answer.
Shall we listen to the player so she can
let's
leak out her...
tell us what Rolling Stone said.
I will say one thing. I'll say what Rolling Stone said, and I'll say one other thing. So Rolling Stone said they were the perfect music anti-heroes for the 70s, which intrigued me after then listening to them, because I thought, well... No, they sound like a 70s band in many respects. But anyway, I thought that would be interesting to discuss. I wrote, I was not expecting as much noodling as there was.
So much noodling.
That is what I wrote. lot of noodling.
A lot of it from a guy called Jeff Skunk Baxter as well, who
what a
who
name.
looks exactly as you'd imagine he would look. You know, very, very long straight hair, big moustache, who in his attempts at getting studio perfection became fascinated in how technology could be used in warfare, and was a defense advisor to the Trump administration. So went from being in a cool arty liberal jazz infused cool 70s band. He was in the Doobie Brothers as well. Is now hated amongst the community. If you follow any of those old guys on Twitter, like David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, when people ask him about Jeff Skunk Baxter, he's just got nothing but utter vitriol for the man.
Underrated.
Let's get into it. So, what's your first pick, Matthew?
Well, this is, it's a song I chose because it's one of my favourites, and it's called "Dirty Work." It's from Can't Buy a Thrill, 1972, their debut album. And the reason I chose it, if I was gonna introduce someone to Steely Dan, weirdly, even though this is the first song I've chosen, this wouldn't be the song, because it's got David Palmer singing it's not Donald Fagen. Donald Fagen has a very distinct vocal. David Palmer has an extremely smooth voice. This is David Palmer. When they perform it live, Donald Fagen doesn't sing it. He gets the backing singers they take a verse each, which can be a bit of a kind of why sing one note when 47 will do nightmare.
I did see a live version, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, but I think this is an absolutely beautiful song, and I think because they're so arch lyrically and often very silly in a kind of pseudo intellectual way, I like this song because it's pure heart. It's a really heartbreaking song, and Robin Allender, you might know Robin Allender, who co-hosts the Moon Underwater podcast with John Robbins, and is a fantastic musician and hosts a brilliant podcast, my own personal Beatles. And he tweeted the other day, Steely Dan, you can say a lot about Steely Dan, but they don't write beautiful songs. And I and a bunch of other dickheads descended on him. Okay, well, have you listened to this? I think Deacon Blues is another example of a very beautiful and heartbreaking song. But this one especially, and maybe it's because it's not got Fagen at the helm, even though it was written by Becker and Fagen. I just find it incredibly moving and touching. And I've never found myself in a situation whereby I am a sort of posh lady's side piece and I find it heartbreaking because I'm sort of in love with her. I'm aware of the emotion of being in a situation where you're going, why do I do this? Why am I in this situation? Why am I a fool? And I love it. And it's smooth, and it sounds like something that wouldn't be out of place on, Smooth or Heart or one of those stations. I don't know if they do ever play this sort of thing on those stations, but it wouldn't seem completely out of the ordinary. But it's for me, it's just a slight sort of cut above some of that stuff. I don't know why. Just love it.
So, Fran, as more of an expert, I would say in the dad rock vibes 70s song, what did you think? Well, you know 70s music better than I do. That's why
I don't rise as the dad rock specialist. But so yeah, I guess this maybe feels slightly different to other songs. Like I guess it's a bit Chicago, a bit Eagles, maybe.
Yeah, it's got that.
Yeah, it's more straightforward than the other material I think I've listened to. It's maybe a little bit too repetitive. I mean, I listened to it maybe 5 times for the past 2 days, and the lyrics didn't really hit me as much as they hit you, but obviously I was mainly listening to the music. We don't tend to chat about lyrics a lot on this podcast.
It's a running theme that we research the lyrics when we have to talk about songs, but when we've listened to a song in our daily lives, very often it totally goes over our heads.
Apparently this divides the fan base because obviously it's not sung by Donald Fagen. But I think it works. I can imagine this again being on a film set in the 70s, and it'd work fine. But yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to play it again. Babs?
So yeah, I like this song, and I'm surprised I did, because when it started and I heard the melodic rock piano come in, Matthew, this is something we've talked about a lot, and I'm generally not a fan, and I'm not a fan of Americana normally and stuff like that. I thought, is this what the 5 songs are going to be like? But then when the brass section came in and the song kind of kicked in, I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. And then on it took a few listens to get my head around it, but yeah, I really liked it. I like the harmonies. The voice sounds very pure, and the verses are a bit jarring sometimes. Like their stop starts when you don't expect it, which is really surprising when then you have a chorus that's so unbelievably catchy.
Yeah.
And why not have a sax solo instead of a guitar one? So yeah, I like this song. But if you told me, right, Barbara, the first song is going to be a 70s song, there's some rock piano and a brass section, I would have been like, oh God, like please no. But no, this I'm with you, Matthew. It's very nice and it works.
I was thinking of you through this playlist, but I was thinking, a lot of these are things you've mentioned as things I hate in music. But,
But this one is good.
Matthew, can I ask, do you find it hard to not push, but like introduce this band to your friends? Is there a pushback on Steely Dan? Or
I've stopped trying with anything I like. All I can do is I sort of do it by osmosis. I find that occasionally I'll recommend a thing to somebody and they'll be like, oh, I listened to that thing you recommended and I really liked it. But it's very rare. I think people, especially when you get to a certain age, I'm the same way. Like people will buy me books and go like, oh, I thought you'd like to read this. And you go, well, you thought wrong, in the bin. So I feel like that's, I don't try and force anybody to listen to it. I brought my wife along to see them the first time we went, and I think she enjoyed it fine. But this is not her kind of music at all. But yeah, I've got a few friends who I know like Steely Dan. Joe Wilkinson loves Steely Dan, big Steely Dan fan. My friend Tom Gibbs, he is who's a writer for the Telegraph. He is big Steely Dan fan. Don't worry, he writes sports for the Telegraph. He's not like he loves all of Jeff Skunk Baxter stuff, especially. He's a big. But yeah, so he likes them, and you just go, well, I know enough people that if they come and play, I'll go and see them, or I can chat about them with.
Did you pick an album for Album Club by Steely Dan?
You know what? I never did because. And I'll tell you for why. I don't think I could handle people slagging it off.
Oh, okay.
And no, that's fine because I understand what this is. But
reviews notes.
Yeah, no. This is totally fine, right? Because
you don't know us.
I understand. Yeah, that was going to be my very big B. Because I understand what we're getting into here. I've been awful about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and if there are people listening who love them, that's hard to hear. But also, yeah, I don't know you guys. That's But if you've got 8 or 9 of your closest friends sending you a message going, "This sucked for these 5 reasons," then you're like, "Oh, come on, guys."
What's your next pick?
Well, this for me is a bit more sort of classic Steely Dan. It's a song called "Hey 19." It's from the Gaucho album. It's from 1980. And this, I think, when people think of Steely Dan, this is what they think of: pervy old men. It's a song about being a pervy old man. I think when they wrote it, they were in their early 30s. So it's still pretty creepy to be singing about a 19-year-old. But I think they're again inhabiting this character, and so the idea is it's about an aging soul fan who is trying to get off with girls who are a lot, and also like. He's there. He's drinking tequila and he's doing cocaine, and he's very 1970s. He's drinking tequila, he's doing cocaine, he's trying to mac with girls who are much younger than him, and it's not going well. After talking a lot about Anthony Kiedis going, oh god, all he sings about is sex. How can I sort of defend this song? But I think for me, it's a character
your last
study.
Pick, especially that one is.
Well, yeah, Cousin Dupree is. Cousin Dupree is. We'll get to Cousin Dupree in a little bit, but it inhabits, and that was from when they got back together in 2000 for the Two Against Nature album. But yes, so Hey 19, again musically very much that kind of the smooth jazz kind of, again a lot of kind of noodly guitars. Incredibly catchy chorus, I think, and it's part of like I think one of the sort of part of their manifesto, Steely Dan, was to make music that could be played. I think this is, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's like music that could be played in a dentist's waiting room. That was one of them, but with lyrics that are awful, you know. So like they wanted, I think their idea of a kind of big musical joke was, we will write these songs that, you know, like a Christian mum going to pick up her groceries, from Walmart or whatever, or, you know, from Target or whatever the American supermarkets are called, the Circle K. She'd be going to pick up her groceries and singing, you know, "Hey 19, no, we can dance together," you know, like, and whilst not really realizing that it's about some sort of grubby pervert trying to get his hands on a teenager. Does that make it good music? Does that make it something that everyone should enjoy? No, not necessarily. But I think musically, it's something I really do. I think they managed to be incredibly kind of poppy, and it sounds like it could be like I say, it could be played on hard or smooth. But it makes interesting decisions. It's not, you know, if they very rarely have a song that's like a 4-chord structure, and if they do, they will do something in the middle to go, "Hey, we know more than 4 chords." Just in case someone thought we didn't know, we know a lot of chords, and lots of chords that your favourite bands don't know. You know, that you need about 8 hands to play. We know those are our kind of chords. They do a song called "With a Gun" on the Pretzel Logic album, which is basically like a kind of country. It's a kind of country song, like a sort of fast-paced country song. But even that has got a big sort of jazz chord breakdown before the sort of middle 8, just to go, don't worry, we're still Steely Dan. This is what we do. I'm guessing if you didn't like Dirty Work, Fran.
Well, no, I didn't not like Dirty Work. It just didn't resonate the same as it did for you. Like, so what I found interesting is that this is from 1980, and this has one of the first ever drum machines.
Yeah,
and it cost them like 200,000 and took like 6 months to build.
That's right. This is the point where they had stopped performing live, no longer performing live, and so they would just go into a studio and build an album, and so they were obsessed with technology. So yeah, so it was the bleeding edge of technology, which you listen to it now and you go, you assume you're going to hear Kraftwerk.
Yeah,
you know. You assume it's going to be something that is like, or like the, like the bit, the 808 intro to Donna Summer's "I Feel Love," or something that is a kind of the era, but using this, or, you know, McCartney's Temporary Secretary, or something like that. That's like, you know, trying to bring in, but it isn't at all. They're making. If you didn't know, you might not notice it.
Yeah, imagine the label after hearing the album, after paying 200 grand. So, what did we make you guys again? Like, what? Like,
there's a very good chance it cost about 80 quid and they spent the rest of the money on cocaine.
Well, obviously, yeah. And like, as you mentioned, this was their biggest ever hit in America. This was top 10.
Yeah, huge.
Top 10 hit.
Huge song.
In 1980, it was, like, this is during New Wave. So they weren't listening to the contemporaries. They were very much Steely Dan. And I put it down. You know, it's hilarious that this could be on smooth jazz while I was talking about cocaine and shagging young girls. This is more of a Red Hot Chili Peppers lyric. But I think the harmonies on the chorus are delightful. I enjoy the keys out front. There's not as much noodling as in other songs for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't. But it's not like they call themselves jazz, but for jazz in my head isn't what I hear here. This is more.
I think it's jazz in terms of the chord progressions, as far as I know, rather than it being.
Although Hancock.
Although they've got they there are other albums where they have sort of straight homages to like Charlie Parker and stuff that are more like a jazz song, but like mostly they are a band that would be described as yacht rock. I think that's the sort
I've never heard that. I'm loving that news.
I have heard of that. And when you go on their Spotify, it is kind of like yacht rock playlists. This was such a shift. I got Chris Rea MOR vibes. There's synths. Is there like a synth harmonica solo? Is what I've written as a question mark.
It's kind of like a harmonica, yeah.
But a synth harmonica, you know?
Yeah.
Very, very bizarre. And it made me, like, I thought it was fine. I really enjoyed the little bits where they're speaking. You know, there's just like this instrumental, and then they go, "Nice, sure,
Yeah,
looks good."
it's exactly.
Honestly.
And I don't know how much of it, like, you know, obviously that was parodied by the Fast Show years later. But
that's what I wrote down. I was like, I can imagine John Thompson introducing this song on
skate
on
a
Jasper.
little lower now, that kind of thing. And you're like, how much of this are they? Because they, you know, like they're not so arch that they think they're making crap music, or they're not, and they love Thelonious Monk, and that sort of their, you know, that is what they are obsessed by and revere. So it's not like they're going, oh, jazz is easy, and all the things around jazz. But yeah, I you never know quite how much they are in how much of a wink they're giving to the audience.
Do both ad libs remain when they do it live?
I think they do. Yeah, I think he'll.
Does the audience join in? Nice.
Sure feels good.
Get a little lower. I can imagine it. So, but yeah, it was interesting to read about the album. What Wikipedia says is the band used at least 42 different musicians, spent over a year in the studio, and far exceeded the original monetary advance given by the record label. Well, no shit when you're telling the stories about the drum machine. But what I found really interesting, given that it seems to be quite one of the more important albums by Steely Dan. So Becker, during these sessions, was hit by a car and he was in hospital, but it says he and Fagan continued their musical collaborations via telephone. I mean, what? How? Like, can you imagine trying to explain something from a hospital? Fair enough, fair play to them. So yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Walter, I've got skate a little something. I don't know what it should be. Skate a little higher. Skate a little at the same direction I'm currently skating. Lower. Thanks, Walter. All right, get well soon. Love you.
Ciao. So yeah, I didn't dislike it, but yeah, I didn't love it. But yeah, I thought it was a real left shift, because I thought like, oh right, okay, they're from an era that's earlier than I thought. Like I said, I thought they were kind of late 80s, early 90s, and then you have, you know, not a stereotypical 70s song, but a 70s song. To go into this, I thought, bloody hell, what, this is very different. And then yeah, I mean, later on you can go kind of back into the 70s, and it's, yeah, I they seem to have these two areas of like, yeah, melodic piano brass section Steely Dan and MOR Steely Dan, and I think I'm more into the 70s from what I've seen.
Anyway, moving to the next track, Matthew.
Yes, indeed. So this is my favourite Steely Dan song. I think if I had to pick one, this would be my favourite one. And again, it's early. It's early Steely Dan. This is when they were still playing live, and there's some great live versions of this out there from the era, from the time. It's My Old School. It's a song all about getting busted in a pot bust. This is the 70s for you, whilst at university. And it's about, so the Annandale is what they call Bard, their old alma mater, and it's about being with a girlfriend and them all getting busted at a pot raid on a party, and I just think it is, again, if you know, like I absolutely love this is Jeff Skunk Baxter playing the guitar on this, and I love the solos on this. I just think it sounds like a band jamming, which they don't often sound like because they are not a jam band, you know. But it sounds like a band who are all great musicians, just trying to do fun stuff together. Again, love the backing vocals, love the sort of I love Donald Fagen's vocal line on this as well. I think it's I just think it's a banger.
Yeah, this is my favourite song on the playlist. I think it's got like an Elton John funky piano.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
David Bowie, Young Americans, I think has borrowed from this a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe mid-70s Paul Simon as well, being influenced. I mean, I've slagged off saxophones in the past, but the sax work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
here we go.
It's got some good brass on
sax.
this one, hasn't it?
We've got some good sax. Yeah. The backing vocals are brilliant. It's like kind of anti-nostalgia. The Jeff Baxter guitar solo was amazing, but now you kind of tainted him for me.
Well, at the time he was okay. He was doing a song about a pot raid, man.
Yeah, but his guitar solo dancing with his horns was a definite yes, and yeah, I love the song. So thank you for introducing me. Babs, how about you?
So the rock, piano, and the brass are back, guys.
Sure they are.
Yeah, this feels more, I would say, straightforward 70s, which is, as I mentioned, not normally so much my jam. And I wrote many of the notes that you did. I also wrote Roxy music. Early
it's
Roxy
got that.
music.
It's got that to it.
I really like the voices and the harmonies throughout. Actually, I think on all the songs, I really love them. It works really well. But I think the instrumental stuff for me is just noodling. It doesn't really move me. And the song cuts off just as he's actually going properly mental on guitar. It starts going a bit weird, and I would have liked that to have continued. So yeah, I would say actually one of my lesser favourite songs from this playlist, but yeah, interesting nonetheless, especially to hear that they were involved in this drug bust, and Becker was taken to the Poughkeepsie jail where his long hair was cut off.
Yeah,
which is mad.
I had heard that. I mean, in looking at the Wikipedia page for this song before I introduce you guys to it, I couldn't believe it. That sounds like something. Well, it sounds like something that would happen to people today, but it sounds like something that's so mad that it would be like, right, these goddamn hippies, we're going to cut your hair in like.
If we cut your hair off, you're going to smoke smoking.
That was the main issue. The hair, actually.
I just think it's so you kind of understand, and it's funny as well because it's not an angry song. Even though it is an angry, it's a song full of anger. California tumbles into the sea before I go back. The day I would go back to Annandale. So they're clearly, are livid at the university itself. Again, another California song. I had to put it in there because
we can't escape California, even if it is going into the sea.
Hello, this is a promo for a podcast about a playlist.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's called Playlist. Yeah. My name's Mike Lash, former actor, former comedian, former creative, former cool dude. This is
Kerry Mitchell, former musician, former art student, current cool dude.
We've created a playlist, a fucking brilliant playlist.
The best playlist ever, to the point where we spoke to each other about how good the playlist is, and that we wanted to be the people at a party who's putting on the music and only putting on a few seconds of the music before changing the song, because everyone loves those guys at a party.
That's us. So each week we have a guest and they have to choose one song to define them as a human person. One song for me, Mike Lash, to sing right after.
And then, because Mike is not the best person in his family, we've incorporated his mum to give her insight into each song, which will maybe help the guest to define themselves as a person.
But really, we probably shouldn't get bogged down in the format of the podcast. It's really heavily edited, so it's not actually that boring. It's quite short, so I really think you'll like it. Kerry's kids are home, so it's probably the end of this promo.
It is. What was it? www.playlistshare.com. And available wherever you get your podcasts.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad.
So are we going to move on to track 4?
Yeah, let's do it. Kid Charlemagne from the Royal Scam. So again, 1970s, 1976 in this instance. Kid Charlemagne. Now, just out of interest, because I know what this song's about. I don't know if you've looked it up, but did you get any idea of what they were singing about?
An LSD chemist.
Yeah, that's it. Basically, yeah, it's a drug dealer. Yeah, it's a drug dealer. So again, it's one of those things where there's a fascinating bit in this song, which sounds like the theme tune to a 1980s game show. It's the bit that goes like down. It sounds like it could be the theme tune to Every Second Counts of Paul Daniels. But this to me, I think, is the kind of the key song for. You could hear this being played in a dentist waiting room, but the lyrics are about a guy who has just by chance he's crossed the diamond with the pearl. He's come up with this amazing formula for this amazing whatever it might be, LSD. It's some drug that he's cooking in his apartment that is turning him into the kind of the hero of the of the area. But of course, the police, the people down the hall, everybody seems to have his number, for good or for bad. So yeah, still it's the 70s. They're still banging on about drugs. Every song still has to have some, drugs were very much their California. Got to have some reference to cocaine or a pot bust. But I think this is I think this is just a really, I just think it's just a really brilliant song. It's hard when you just love a song so much to kind of go, well, here's the thing I like about it, because I've known this. I first heard Steely Dan when I was about sort of 14 or 15, so I've known this song for years now. It's just one of those. It's just one of those songs. I find it pretty irresistible. And again, I find it like I really love the musicianship of it, but it's so odd that they would choose to make music that is so cheesy. It goes from like being really cheesy to being really weird and slightly psychedelic, and I love
how much
that
are they in on the
juxtaposition.
joke, like you said?
Yeah,
Like,
but I think even this is not. It's not a joke. It's like this is music they like, but it's just they like a lot of. They've got sort of fairly narrow sort of tastes, really, but within that sort of narrow band, their influences are quite eclectic. I know that sounds a bit contradictory, but they're into
they have a lot of genres that they're into, and within those genres they span a lot and bring them together in an unusual way. Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, or at least they like one particular genre, but lots of different bits of that genre, and they've turned it into this sort of music,
jazz rock fusion.
Yeah, jazz rock fusion, exactly. Yeah. I just think it's great. I find it very, and I also talking about beautiful songs. It's not really a beautiful song, but there's a bit when he strains up for the note. No, he's got the line, "Is there gas in the car?" Yes, there's gas in the car, and he can't quite hit the second car, and I love it. I think it's like it's sort of slightly strangulated falsetto, and I just find that incredibly moving. I just find that little moment. Again, it's got that fear and the desperation of a man who's on the edge, and but yeah, with this, about to go into a game show theme tune.
I did enjoy how he delivers Technicolor Motorhome.
Technicolor Motorhome, yeah. Everyone stopped and stared at your Technicolor Motorhome. Yeah, they've really got a. He's like, who wrote? That's definitely Walter Becker wrote that for Donald Fagen to sing. Could it just be Big Motorhome? Because then I don't have to cough up my lung every time I'm trying to perform it.
It might have James Dean Bradford trying to fit in Rich Edwards' lyrics into his song, Phenomenix. But again, great track. You've not mentioned Larry Colton's guitar solo being voted as one of the best of all time. I believe in the 70s it was voted the second best guitar solo of all time, but now slowly it's faded down to number 82 over the years.
Yeah, that's the passing of time, isn't it, for you?
Yeah.
What was number one when it was voted number two? Do you know what it was?
I did not know that.
No, that would be interesting to know. But
probably Jimi Hendrix or or Pink Floyd maybe.
Yeah, or Led Zeppelin, or one of the big guitar gods. But that's it again. Like you don't think of Steely Dan as being. Most people don't think of Steely Dan at all. But you don't think of them as being like.
Yeah.
Not shredders, but like big noodly guitar kind of guys.
And it's nice that they give someone who's not in the band that that part.
Yeah.
Amaze us. We're paying a lot of money. Show us what you're.
Come in and show us what you've got. Yeah, but I think that was always their. That's how they operated. That was just they were bringing the best people.
I was thinking, are there any other bands like this? Because for so long,
Talk. Spirit of Eden, Talk. Basically, he hired like £1 million for.
But the thing is, that's one album,
musicians.
right? Consistently, this is what Steely Dan do. Like for every single album, the two of them. But they bring in other people.
I guess Simply Red would be, like bands where it's the main. Oh, I mean, there's a lot of bands I like that are one guy who's called that band. Like Built to Spill is a band I'm a big fan of, and Built to Spill has constantly got a rotating lineup with Doug Marsh as the sort of central figure. And I mean, very rare that Mick Hucknall and Doug Marsh get compared to each other, but I guess that's the same thing with Mick Hucknall, is that he is Simply Red. It's not like a band like Fairport Convention where they're basically Trigger's Broom, aren't they? No original existing members are in Fairport Convention that were in.
But to have
in the
two
70s.
people, where you have enough to have, whatever it is, a person on guitar, person on drum. It's you both have to.
They're not the
agree
White
on
Stripes
the other
though. They couldn't go out and go, yeah, I'll play the keyboard. Walter, you just hit this glockenspiel a bit, and we'll see what we can do.
Matthew, don't tell me you wouldn't see Steely Dan plays the White Stripes concert. Of course you would.
Of course.
I guess Squeeze maybe is still just two members for the past 20 odd years.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, and two kind of key songwriters.
But yeah, for me, yeah, I thought this was a bit of a left turn. It starts with some.
How many left turns? I think we're back where we started. I think it's the fourth left turn we've had so far.
1990. Yeah, but this is it. Like I think because of the order as well that you put this, I feel like it shifts genre with every selection. Because this one starts with some quite menacing synths, which is unusual compared to the others, and I definitely preferred this to my old school or Hey 19 because it's a bit. I've written very deep, more fun, more groovy, more layered. That's it, basically. That's what I took from it. And again, I think maybe similar to Hey 19, I can appreciate it, but it doesn't move me very much. I think that's it. And yeah, I think as someone who doesn't pay much attention to lyrics, I don't get that so much. Although it's making me think, is this the prequel to Kasabian's Cut Off, which starts with John was a scientist, he was hooked on LSD. Maybe this was the inspiration for that.
It could well be. It could well be.
We didn't know.
Well,
who knew that Steely Dan influenced Kasabian? You heard it here first.
When you get Serge on the podcast, you'll have to ask him. It's interesting you say that. Actually, I'd never looked at it from that point of view. It is more like the menacing keyboards at the start. If you compare my old school, which is about them being pissed off at their old university for being done for drugs and having a horrible experience of being put in jail and having their hair cut and that sort of thing, but it is a funky jam song. It's a really jolly song. There is more texture and layer to Hey 19 and certainly Kid Charlemagne. It starts with these kind of like slightly ominous keyboards. It's sort of it feels like it could they go to, I mean, I know nothing musically, but it goes to a slightly unusual place where you go, oh, that's a bit jarring to the ear before you get into the song to create this mood of probably an insanely paranoid, possibly drug addicted man himself who is on wondering how many more days he's got before his lifestyle catches up with him, his career choices catch up with him. It feels like the music is matching the lyrical content, even though there is still some quite joyous and silly and kind of. I've used the word cheesy. I'm sort of loath to use it again because I don't consider them to be cheesy, but upbeat and
melodic.
Upbeat and melodic at moments. But yeah, it's interesting. It just shows you that they were. I think this is better.
This is why it's interesting to. Like I said, I didn't know anything. It's interesting to discover a band through a playlist, and I think the order is very important because it was difficult to kind of get a grip on them from this playlist to really pinpoint what do they do apart from they're a bit jarring, but they're also a bit groovy. Yeah,
I mean, I could and I think I don't know if this is necessarily true of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I think I could make you a playlist of 5 songs that you would go, we would have a completely different conversation about what kind of band Steely Dan were. If I picked you like Pretzel Logic, With a Gun, Parker's Band, like a bunch of those songs that are doing like different genres, I feel like that I could present a completely different, it's the old thing about the blind people describing an elephant. That thing about one of them thinks he's holding a rope because he's got the tail, and the other one thinks he's holding a big dick. I don't know what.
Matthew, I'm not saying.
I'm trying to think of what the other bits of the elephant were.
That's just a big dick.
I think I'm holding a big dick here. Am I holding a giant's dick? No, you're holding an elephant's trunk. Yeah, it's weird. I didn't think of that first, actually.
Well, Matthew, I'm not saying that we wouldn't invite you for Steely Dan Part 2, but I'm not saying that either with a different playlist.
I mean, we've been talking for nearly 3 hours. I'm like, I really feel like we're just barely scratching the surface here. Maybe do 5
Is there an essential album? Asia seems to be the big album, and you haven't got any songs from that album.
No, Asia is a pretty huge album. I think. Oh man, I don't know because there's. I think Countdown to Ecstasy would be an incredible starting point for you. I think because they are a lot more confident. Like Can't Buy a Thrill is a lot more all over the place musically. It's them trying out a bunch of different things. I feel like they're more secure in who they are as a band when it comes to Countdown to Ecstasy. But then you get something like Pretzel Logic, which has a bunch of songs that they wrote pre-Steely Dan that they then cover as they then record as Steely Dan because they, I guess, needed more songs. They most of their albums, unlike the Red Hot Chili Peppers, are 8 or 9 songs long. They don't tend to put on, they're not a kind of Which must have infuriated the record label even more. Yeah, don't worry, we've got 6 songs recorded. When are you going to record the other, 5? No, that's it. Sit with 6 songs. That's the album.
Bye.
3 on each side. That's it. And by the way, we're $750,000 over budget, and it's 1976, when that means a lot more than it does. Casey Lyde's a really good album as well. Yeah, I think maybe if you wanted to sort of possibly because Can't Buy a Thrill's got Dirty Work, and it's got Reading in the Ears, and I think it's got Ricky Don't Lose That Number on it as well. I think I might be getting that wrong, but it's got a bunch of the kind of early big hitters, so that might be a good place to start if you just wanted, I know this one or I know that one.
Do you think, Matthew, they're more of an album band where it is worth kind of sitting down with an album, or is it better to kind of make
definitely,
a playlist of
yeah, it really is. Spend a bit of time with Countdown to Ecstasy or Pretzel Logic or something. I mean, basically, is there any album I haven't mentioned that you should listen to?
Well, the next one, from your final pick,
which actually is interesting. I don't know this one as well. They came back in 2000 with an album called Two Against Nature, and they won a Grammy for this album. So it was a well regarded album. But you listen to it and you go, if I didn't know this was from 2000, I wouldn't go, they've really brought things up to the modern day. It doesn't sound they were already using incredibly sophisticated technology to record their albums, but they kind of knew what kind of music they wanted to make. But the reason I've picked this is because I think this, to me, is such a funny essay on shiftless youth that this could be a piece of writing in McSweeney's or something like that. It's got that kind of thing about this utterly and again it's a character, this narrator who doesn't seem to realize what a loser he is. I think the character of Cousin Dupree is a brilliant.
I would not want to be in a room with him, thank you.
No, of course not. Of course not. And I don't think Donald Fagen is going, this is who I am, or this is, even though I don't know, he probably is a bit like this, but it's an element, it's pretty, so it's a guy who comes back from university and he presents himself as like, while I'm working on my next move, what's my next move going to be? Sort of slightly grandiose terms. Basically, he hasn't got a job. He's finished university. He's probably in a ton of debt. He's living with his auntie. I was just, as a stopgap. He's very kind of very proud. This is like a stopgap. I'm just living with my auntie. And then his cousin walks in, who we're assuming is the same age, because they say, we used to play when we were 3. How about a kiss for your cousin Dupree? And he fancies his cousin. And it's about how... it's such... He's such an awful character. He goes, she made my life a living hell from the way she was looking,
and there's little tops and tight capris.
Little tops and tight capris. But the great bit is when my favourite bit, of course, he doesn't let Cousin Dupree get the last line. Well, he sort of does, but she shuts him down. And in fact, have you got the lyrics there?
I've got the lyrics. So yeah.
Do you want to read the bit about when he finally decides to make a move in front of the fireplace and she shuts
the lyrics
down.
are: she said, maybe it's the skeevy look in your eyes, or that your mind has turned to applesauce, the dreary architecture of your soul. I said, but what is it exactly that turns you off?
Yeah, that's like a classic old joke, but say what you really mean. But I love it, and I think if you look at, here is a guy, and ostensibly it's another song about sex. It's a song about lust, and it's a song about sex, and it's a song about sort of fantasy. And the character of Cousin Dupree is a total loser. In the same way that I think the character in Hey 19 is a loser. She thinks I'm crazy. I'm just growing old. It's a sort of tragic figure. Doing coke in a bar when he's an old guy trying to mac on babes. It's the same. It's this clearly a same thing that concerns Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, of being old men, and how that they sort of fit in with the world, or how they fit in with women. But you look at Kiedis's lyrics and you go, he's like, then I made her come and you're like, okay, all right, we get it. Why would you write a song where you're this hero who's like, even when you get arrested, the police officer can't believe how sexy you are, wants to have sex with you. It's like the worst sort of penthouse letters type thing. But he's written this character who is a total loser, and then when the girl speaks, she's just got this amazing poetic way of, you know, the what's the architecture of your the dreary architecture of your soul. You go like, that's what a perfect reason to not go out with somebody.
Also, he's a cousin. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but as he says, there's nothing wrong with a bit of down home romance.
Family romance.
Down home family romance.
Oh,
but to say to somebody, you know, like imagine, you know, if anyone's listening to this now and has got somebody who's, you know, asked them out and you don't quite know how to shut them down, just tell them I would go out with you, except for the dreary architecture of your soul. I love it. I just think it's brilliant, and it makes me laugh every time. And it's really funky, like it's a really upbeat sort of jazz funk song, and when I first heard it, which was only fairly recently, I didn't know this album at all. I know their 70s stuff well, but I don't know the Two Against Nature. When I heard it, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. All of them, you know, because I think I saw it on like there's a Twitter account which is just like Steely Dan takes or whatever, and they often have like little clips of Steely Dan, and it was just them performing it on like a late night show, one of those shows. And I didn't know where it was from. I hadn't heard it before, so I immediately sought it out, and it's become one of my favourite songs of theirs. It's because it's funny, you know. It's dealing with relationships in a very funny way, and it's dealing with what it feels like to, you know, that period when you come out of university and all of your life, you know, it comes from the same world as The Graduate. You know, the Dustin Hoffman movie of you've been pushed into this, all of this academia. You know, you've had, you know, 7 years of high school, and then you've had 3-4 years of university, and it's all prepping you for what? You know, you come out of it and you've got all these grand ideas because you've been built up by, you know, the world of academia, and then you come out and you go, well, I guess the world should just be handed to me on a plate, and it's satirising those people so brilliantly. And I guess there's, you know, the counter argument is, I'm sure there's people who listen to it and go, well, it's an old grubby pervert writing a song about another old grubby pervert. And yeah, maybe that's true, but at least it shows an element of self-awareness that I think is lacking in our dear friends.
In today's generation.
No, in our dear friend Psycho, of course.
Have you heard about the open letter to You, Me and Dupree, the film?
No. Do they use this song?
So Beckett and Fagan, after hearing about the film You, Me and Dupree, starring Owen Wilson, said that they'd stolen the narrative from the song and they considered suing them. And the producer had to admit that they had not heard the song. And then Owen Wilson said, I do apologise to the band, but I'm now going to make my new film, Hey 19. But yeah, apparently nothing came off it, but I do enjoy
That's amazing.
That film was even on their radar, for fuck's sake.
You, Me and Dupree. Somebody got in touch with them and said, have you heard about this You, Me and Dupree movie? I think it might have been...
I imagine them both in the cinema shaking their fists while watching it. Hang on, Wilson! But, yeah.
That's amazing.
As you mentioned, you know, it felt like they'd been frozen in time for 20 years and just came out and did another album. You would not know this is, you know, the 21st century.
Yeah.
Although they've kind of got rid of the sax and the female vocalists. The guitar's a bit more upfront, and it sounds a bit like Mark Knopfler in style.
Oh yeah, well I love Mark Knopfler.
That's what it was.
Brilliant.
I was looking for something. Yeah, that's
There's
it.
that dad rock.
Dad rock. I told you, Fran. You're the expert.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most ordinary lyric, but I did enjoy watching one of those YouTube reaction videos with a guy listening to this, and then suddenly it kicked in what it was about. He's like, what? Say what? Family romance.
I love YouTube reaction videos to music.
It won a Grammy. I don't know if that's just a thank you for the previous 30
one
years,
of those
maybe.
one of those
It
things
sold
of like
more than 1 million copies. It got to number 6 on the Billboard 200. I couldn't believe
Mad.
it. Because like you, I wrote, I can't believe this is a song from this millennium. But musically, it was one of my favourites. I think the beginning sounded really intriguing, and I quite like, I'm going to call them the spooky bits that are in the song, because occasionally there's like a little ooh, and there's a whistle, and it was one that on repeated listens definitely grew on me. But Matthew, I'm very glad that you kind of set out lyrically, because I was like, okay, how self-aware is this? Like, obviously this guy is horrible, and the fact that they give voice to the cousin who says you've got literally a skeevy look on your face. But I did think like, oh yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it, between making fun of this and people who might take it a bit
Yeah,
seriously.
I think the thing, I guess the thing that you don't have is Cousin Dupree doesn't learn his lesson.
No.
He doesn't get his comeuppance. You get the feeling that, Cousin Dupree is going to go off and just, work his way through the rest of his family until finally a great aunt, somewhere.
Great Aunt Matilda, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Decides that it's a good idea to give him a little smooch. You hope, don't you? But I think just from reading Walter Becker's writing, that he is aware of how ridiculous they're a humorous band. I mean, are they feminists? I don't think I would say they probably are, but I think they're very much product of the 1970s. One of the things when Becker died is Donald Fagen wrote a sort of open letter of basically explaining, I'm not stopping touring because I need the money, but in a very, what a wonderful man Walter Becker was. And one of the things they did say was we had many happy times taking the piss out of Walter's wife.
Oh God! Who then sued him?
He
right?
loved my impersonation of his wife, and I'd often write him letters in the voice of his wife.
Wow!
And you go, oh right, yeah. So you are rotters.
Well, even the live performance of Dirty Work that I saw, this is always a bugbear, even though a lot of people do it. When the backing vocalists stop singing, they're like, "Give it up for the girls," and it just really annoys me when grown women are reduced to girls. But yeah, I would say they're not anti-feminists at least from the songs that you provided. But I don't think they're going out there with the other bra burners, are they? So after all that, Fran, do you think Steely Dan are underrated?
So it's interesting because obviously in America they've sold over 40 million albums and they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and have all the accolades. So they're not in America. They're not really underrated. In the UK, they've sold 560,000, which is a massive drop.
That seems so few, doesn't it?
So I mean, I think they've had literally one top 40 song in the UK.
Or what? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it's called Haitian Divorce.
Oh, Haitian Divorce. Yes, I know Haitian Divorce.
A number 19 hit, and I played it, and I never heard it in my life.
Yeah, that's quite an odd song. Weird that was the one that broke through and not Reading in the Years or one of their sort of more popular songs.
And they've had one top 10 album, which is Asia. It's got to number 8. So if we're talking about the UK, then I would say they're underrated.
Yes. Well, at least two of us are talking from the UK, so I feel like.
And that's kind of the problem, isn't it, guys? No.
Do you hear them on the radio in Belgium, Luxembourg?
No, absolutely, not knowingly. Definitely not knowingly. And when you mentioned those are the biggest hits, I'm like, I have never heard, as far as I know, Reading in the Years or whatever it was.
I wish I sort of wish I'd known that. I don't know why I didn't assume that, but
Matthew, it's fine. You come back for part 2.
But I will do. We'll come back and we'll do the mainstream, the most mainstream. We'll do their Spotify top 5.
Okay, deal. Yeah, when I saw that they had 5 million monthly listens, like you say, mostly in America, all the top 5 cities on Spotify are American. And given that I really liked one song and thought the others were fine, for me, no, they're not that underrated. I think they clearly have an audience. Okay, they're not super mainstream, but I'm not surprised they're not super mainstream because they're not that kind of band. Or if they are, it's, like you say, it's with a wink and a nudge. So I really enjoyed getting to know them. And Matthew, as someone who listens to your Radio X show, where Steely Dan is always, or seemingly always, the punchline. Or
Ed finds it very funny that I'm into Steely Dan.
Into Steely Dan, I was like, I have to find out about this band. So nice to have you on here to do that.
My pleasure.
But it wasn't at all what I was expecting. So I enjoyed being wrong-footed and having many a left turn, but no, I would say they're rated.
Okay, I'll accept that. I mean, I rate them certainly. So
yeah, hey.
Happy to be part of the gang.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're overrated because clearly they're doing something special and they're doing something that not many other bands are doing. Happy for them and their fans, and yeah, I think that would be my summary.
Matthew, have any listeners got in touch to tell you that they have now converted to the Steely Dan life?
Steely Dan life, LYF.
There have been a few people who've got in touch with me to say, "Oh, I also like Steely Dan," and glad you're making making that.
Thank you.
You know, that normalised liking Steely Dan. But a few people have said they've listened to them and have been like, I think people are genuinely surprised at what they sound like, because it's not the kind of music that gets made anymore. It's not that you go like, I don't think you can look at bands, you know, if you look at a lot of the sort of, like you said, the new wave bands of the 70s, or the sort of punk bands, or like, you know, bands like Talking Heads, wherever you would fit them into the world. Like, you can see that in modern music. I don't know of many bands who are like, oh, Steely Dan, like, you sound like Steely Dan, you know?
True.
So it's, I think that's why it's surprising to people. You kind of assume they would sound a bit more, you know, angular or art rock, or because that's their, you know, that is their background, is they are too sort of, you know, they're kind of perennial studenty, intellectually types. So you think they'd be making that kind of music, but no, their music that they're making is a lot more kind of commercial. But yeah, I don't know. I just think they're great. I just think they're a great band. I find their music incredibly comforting, and also because the songs are so deceptively simple, they're very catchy, I think, but very complex musically. They're constantly rewarding. Like, going back to listen to these, thinking I'm going to play these songs to people who might not have heard them before. It was really interesting, because you try and hear them with fresh ears, and you hear new things all the time.
I will definitely be listening to Dirty Work again. That's for sure. And yeah, like I said, already got more out of it from listening to a different version. So there's definite complexity there. And yeah, I think, you know, jazz is not one of my favorite genres. I have a playlist called Actual Jazz, and it's all the jazz songs that I like. And there's 31 songs, and about half of them are covers. Right. So yeah, when you said jazz rock fusion, I was a bit worried, but what they're doing, like you say, it's built on jazz, but it's not just that. And I think one of the reviews for the album, the Two Against Nature, was, oh, it's jazz pop, and I can kind of believe that. You know, it's pop it's not straightforward. But yeah, I still stand by them being rated. But yeah, glad to discover them more and.
Well, I love talking about them with you, and I especially love talking about Red Hot Chili Peppers as well. And
I'm glad.
I feel like I've just from spending a bit more time with them as well. I feel a little bit better about those guys, as long as you don't read all the articles about Andy Cadis.
Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. So thank you very much, Matthew. And, you know, we should ask you, is there anything you want to plug?
Yes, what do I want to mention? Well, of course, if you can afford it, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are on tour at the moment, so get yourself along to the nearest. I'll be there maracas away. Yeah, if you can do it, they really do put on a hell of a show. Get yourself out there, guys. Just find the biggest aircraft hangar in your town, and they'll probably be playing there eventually. Listen to the Radio X show. I love doing that. Every Sunday morning, 8 till 11, you can get a podcast of it. It's the Ed Gamble and Matthew Crosby radio show on Radio X. I do a podcast called Pappy's Flat Share, which is with two other guys, my friends Tom and Ben, and that is good fun. I recommend you, if you've enjoyed me talking, but you thought, I wish there were two other people interrupting him that came from the Midlands, then yeah, that's the podcast to listen to. And that's it really. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. You know, it's not, to be honest, I don't put great stuff on either of those platforms, but my DMs are always open. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Total pleasure. Love to see you. And see you later.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Whoo! I think that's going to be a two-parter, isn't it? But it was fun though.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of Over Underrated. That was Steely Dan, guys. What do you think? You can always let us know. We are on social media. We have Twitter, OU Music Pod. We have Instagram, Over Underrated Music Pod. And if you're lucky enough to have email, we are on Gmail, Over underratedmusicpod@gmail.com. So let us know of any other bands or subjects or guests you want to hear in the future. And until then, thanks again for listening. Please subscribe, share, follow, etc., and have a lovely time. Bye bye.